The scent of wood smoke and damp earth clung to the air in our modest Roman townhouse, a stark contrast to the perfumed breezes I'd later come to know in Alexandria. But even then, amidst the familiar sounds of the city, the hawkers crying, echoing from Sabura, the rumble of carts on the cobblestone, a subtle tension permeated our lives. It was a feeling I absorbed, like the dust motes dancing in the weak sunlight that slanted through the atrium's opening. My father's booming laugh often felt jarringly out of sync with the hushed anxieties that clung to my mother, Julia. Pater was a figure of grand gestures and fleeting enthusiasms. One day he'd be regaling us tales about supposed lineage, tracing back to Hercules himself, puffing out his chest with pride. The next he'd be swept away by the allure of the dice or the boisterous company of his equally unreliable companions, leaving a trail of forgotten promises and mounting debts in his wake. I remember the excitement that would bubble within me when he declared we were going to the Circus Maximus, only to have Mater's tight-lipped disappointment settle over the household as the day wore on and he remained absent. Mater, a woman of sharp intellect and quiet strength, carried the weight of his irresponsibility with a stoic grace that belied the worry etched around her eyes. I'd often find her in the tablinum, poring over wax tablets covered in columns of numbers, her brow furrowed in concentration. The hushed conversations with her loyal freedwoman became a familiar soundtrack to my early years. Words like usura, interest, and ominous pronouncements of various creditors would drift through the air, painting a picture of a financial precipice we seemed to perpetually teeter on. The political climate of Rome itself was a constant source of unease. The echoes of Sulla's brutal prescriptions, the lists of citizens declared enemies of the state, still resonated in the whispers of the older generation. The Republic, that grand idea they spoke of in the Forum, felt increasingly fragile, threatened by the ambitions of powerful men, an ever-present specter of civil unrest. I remember overhearing hushed discussions about the growing influence of Pompey, his military victories, and almost regal air he carried. Even as a child, I sensed the shifting sands of power, the underlying instability that made our family's precarious financial situation feel even more vulnerable. Our humble domus, though located in a respectable district, was far from the opulent villas of the patrician class. It was a constant struggle to maintain appearances, to keep up with social expectations of a family with our name, however tarnished Pater's actions made it. Mater would meticulously oversee the household slaves, ensuring every tunic was clean and every meal presentable, a silent testament to her determination to preserve some semblance of dignity amongst the chaos. One particularly vivid memory sears within my mind. A delegation of stern-faced men, their togas impeccably white, and their expressions grim, arrived at our doorstep. They spoke in a low, urgent tone with Mater in the atrium, their words punctuated by rustling papyrus scrolls. I remember peeking from behind a heavy curtain, catching snippets of their conversation, talk of overdue payments, of collateral, of potential seizure of our property. Pater, characteristically, was nowhere to be seen, likely lost in some tavern or gambling den. The sheer terror in Mater's eyes that day, or the way her hand trembled as she signed some document, imprinted itself in my young soul. It was a stark lesson in the consequences of my father's fecklessness, a chilling realization that our very security hung by a thread. In those formative years, amidst the anxieties and uncertainties, my mother became a silent hero. Her resilience, her unwavering commitment to holding our fractured family together, instilled in me a profound sense of responsibility. I watched her navigate treacherous waters of Roman society, her intelligence and quiet determination her only weapons. As I grew, a fierce protectiveness towards her and a simmering resentment towards the man who caused her such distress began to solidify within me. I knew, a certainty that belied my young age, that I would forge a different path, one where strength and decisiveness would prevail over the charming incompetence that defined my father's existence. The anxieties of my childhood became the crucible in which my ambition was forged, a silent promise to myself that I would never allow those shadows to darken the lives of those I cared for. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Courtney. Take a trip with us to ancient Rome at the Time Travelers Club. So this week, we are going to take a break from Cleopatra and leave her in Rome. There she is getting to know another person important to this epic love story that continues to captivate us today. No, not Julius Caesar, but rather his second in command in the original jock frat guy, Mark Antony. But like we are starting to learn with Cleopatra, is that reputation really deserved? After all, we are multifaceted creatures, and it's so easy for history to simplify us into two-dimensional characters until we just become symbols more than anything else. And much like Cleo, Mark was a product of brutal upbringing and turbulent times. Mark Antony was born Marcus Antonius in Rome on January 14th, 83 BCE, during the final decades of the Roman Republic. This was a time of internal strife, corruption, constant upheaval, and anxiety across every social class. His family belonged to the plebeian, gens Antonia, an old but no longer distinguished Roman family. His father, Marcus Antonius Criticus, was the son of a great orator of the same name who had been murdered during the purges of Gaius Marius. His mother, Julia, was a third cousin of Julius Caesar. Antony's very entry into the Roman world was not merely an arrival, but an inheritance, a birthright steeped in the expectations and privileges of his patrician lineage. To be born into the gens Antonia was to step onto a stage already set with the echoes of past glories and the silent demands of maintaining such stature. His paternal grandfather, Marcus Antonius Orator, was not simply a name in the family records. He was a titan of the Roman Forum, a celebrated orator whose command of language could sway senates and captivate the populace. The attainment of the consulship in 99 BCE was not just a political milestone. It was a testament to his profound influence and a benchmark against which future generations of the Antonii would inevitably be measured. Even the formidable Cicero, a colossus of Roman rhetoric in his own right, held Antonius Orator in considerable esteem, a recognition that underscores the depth and impact of his eloquence. This ancestral legacy, rich with the luster of public service and exceptional rhetorical skill, undoubtedly cast a long and significant shadow over the young Marcus Antonius. It presented not only promising avenues for future advancement, the well-worn paths of a distinguished family, but also the implicit and perhaps daunting pressure to not merely follow, but to emulate such a distinguished forebear. The weight of such an inheritance, the unspoken expectation of continuing a tradition of prominence, must have been a palpable presence in Antony's formative years.
Born into a family with notable, albeit somewhat tarnished lineage, Antony's early environment in Rome was likely one of certain social standing, yet lacking in consistent stability. The gens Antonia were not among the most powerful patrician families, but they had senatorial rank, which would have afforded Marcus certain privileges and expectations within Roman society. He would have been exposed to the political discourse and social dynamics of the Republic from a young age. observing the ebb and flow of power and influence within the city. Imagine the sights and sounds of Rome in the 80s and 70s BCE. The bustling forum, the grand public buildings, the legions marching through the street, the orations echoing the Senate, all the death because, we just learned about all that.
Yeah, lots of death.
A lot of anxiety on those streets too. There were, and there are grand buildings, but as we learned with Cleopatra, this is a Rome that's really just starting to get into its own early stages of empire, right? It's not an empire technically because it's a republic, technically, but it has come onto a lot of territory and has got a lot more to go. They've got there's all this culture and crap coming in that they don't want there, but it's going to happen anyway. And there's a lot of people coming to this city, so it's growing. So it's very, very rapid, and it's this kind of chaotic place. Young Antony would have witnessed all of this firsthand. He would have been surrounded by slaves and freedmen who managed the household, and he would have been expected to learn the basic tenets of Roman citizenship and perhaps the rudiments of Latin grammar and literature from a tutor.
Julia, the mother of Mark Antony. Her role in his early life, particularly after the death of his father, was undoubtedly significant in shaping the man he would become. Julia belonged to the prestigious gens Julia, a patrician family that traced its lineage back to the legendary Aeneas and claimed divine descent from the goddess Venus. This connection to such an illustrious family, even though she herself was plebeian through marriage, would have afforded her a certain social standing and influence within Roman society. Being the third cousin of Julius Caesar further cemented her place within the upper echelons of Roman life. This familial tie would later prove to be incredibly important for Antony's political career. Before her marriage to Marcus Antonius Creticus, because Romans and their value of women, we know relatively little about Julia's early life. However, given her family connections, she likely received a traditional Roman education for women of her status, which might have included household management, weaving, and perhaps some basic literacy. She would have been raised with the expectations of a Roman matron, focused on piety, chastity, and domesticity.
Just like current Republican women.
Seriously. This is, and, I'm going to pull from early American history. There was a standard that literally focused on this, and it was called Republican motherhood. And it just, that's exactly what it is.
Well, it's the same thing, just rehashed over and over and over again through history, whether it's the idea of the Madonna or Republican wife and matron or woman, even today, you've got this, right? And it's think about this. We just described to a lot of people the quote unquote ideal woman, oh, well, she may not be the smartest, but God darn it, she's able to maybe not the weaving, but the management of a household and being able to take care of the bills while hubby goes out and does his thing, and I hold down the fort, and I'm just a good mom, a good hard-working mom, a single mom who works two
jobs and loves her kids and never stops. No,
well, she ain't working two jobs because that's for men. But
no. She's working two jobs in the house because she's managing the house and she's also raising children. That's two jobs by itself.
Right. But that's kind of scary though, if you really think about it. This is still for a lot of people the ideal and woman, a place of a woman. And not to get too much into it with it.
We're 2,000 years later and this is still a thing.
But not that this can't be, and okay, if this is what you've chose, wonderful, right? It's the fact that as a culture go, oh, this is the way all women should be.
Yeah.
That's scarier. Like a whole political party thinks that that's the way it should be.
Absolutely. And then, I'm sorry, like, trad wife, it gotta go. It gotta go. It gotta go. So her marriage to Marcus Antonius Criticus should have elevated her social standing even further with the uniting of two great houses. As his wife, she would have managed the household and borne him 3 sons: Marcus, Lucius, and Gaius. The responsibilities of a Roman mother were considerable, and initially she would be the one who oversaw the upbringing and early education of her children. Julia likely played a crucial role in providing stability and support for her sons. Despite the challenges she faced, she ensured they received an education, even if Antony's later pursuits deviated from the traditional Roman expectations. Her connection to Julius Caesar, her cousin, would have been a significant asset. It's plausible that she fostered this relationship, recognizing its potential benefits for her son's future. While the historical accounts often focus on the male figures in Antony's early life, Julia's presence as a strong and resourceful mother, navigating the complexities of Roman society and the misfortunes of her marriage, undoubtedly played a vital role in shaping his early experiences and ultimately influencing the course of his life. She was a woman of noble lineage who faced significant personal challenges and likely instilled in her sons a sense of their family's potential, even amidst periods of hardship. Her connection to the powerful Julius Caesar would eventually open doors for Antony and propel him onto a stage of Roman history.
So going back a little bit again, as we said before, his grandfather, Marcus Antonius Orator, was a towering figure in the Roman public life. A celebrated orator in his time and consul in 99 BCE, his eloquence was renowned even to Cicero, a master rhetoric himself and master misogynist, held him in high regard. This ancestral legacy of public service and skill in oration undoubtedly cast a long shadow, creating both opportunity and potential pressure for his future descendants. Juxtaposed against this almost legendary ancestral figure was the more proximate influence of his father. Marcus Antonius Creticus, the father of the famous triumvir, remains a somewhat shadowy figure in Roman history, largely overshadowed by the accomplishments of his son and father, and often portrayed negatively by his detractors. However, piecing together the available information allows us to form a more detailed picture of his life and context in which he raised young Marcus. For ease, we're going to call him Creticus because there's going to be a lot of Marks, a lot of Antonys, a lot of Antoniuses, and it's just Antonias, and it's just gonna muck it up. So we're going to just give him the nickname Creticus. Creticus belonged to the plebeian gens Antonii, a family that, while ancient and respectable, did not boast the same level of recent political success or widespread influence as some of the great patrician houses. His father, Marcus Antonius Orator, of course, was a significant figure. And he bravely opposed the populist tribune Lucius Appuleius Saturnius, ultimately contributing to his downfall. His grandfather's legacy of eloquence and courage might have placed a certain expectation upon Critias. However, Critias himself seems to have struggled to live up to this familial precedent. Historical accounts, primarily from our favorite misogynist, Cicero, paint him as an incompetent and corrupt. It's important to acknowledge Cicero's strong bias, as he has many of them. But
yeah.
Against Antony's family. He really don't like Antony. He really don't like Cleo, but he really don't like
anybody,
Antony.
honestly.
He
Like,
don't
he just
like,
sounds
to be
like
fair,
a
that
crabby person.
Yeah, to be fair, he is a mean girl. He gossips like hell. He knows all the deets on everybody, and he just, oh my god, he's miserable. God, like no wonder his wife left him. Anyway, it's dead ass, dead
I
ass.
mean, dead
Think about
ass,
that.
but still, goddamn.
Roman in a world where yes, you could get divorced, but it was not usually good for you as a woman. His wife left his ass.
Mm-hmm.
That's saying something. Like God.
Mm-hmm.
But for real, oh my God. But he goes on to paint him as, incompetent and corrupt. But even allowing for some exaggeration, the narrative of Cretius's failures persists. He's kind of like a real life version of Jerry from Rick and Morty. Like, if you ever watched, oh
You see,
God.
I understand some of the references. That one is going past me.
That's okay. For my Rick and Morty fans out there, you get it. You get it. He just needs a good, strong Beth, which is, I guess, kind of is. Oh God. It keeps going. But now I'm going to have Morty playing Mark Antony going, oh, geez. Oh. And really lusting after big, tall, powerful women. This is all tracking.
Who knew that the cartoon was just Roman history?
You heard it here. It's all true. Rick and Morty is just Roman history. Use it for your papers. Don't use us for papers. You'll fail. His career trajectory appears to have been less than stellar before his fateful command, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. We don't have an extensive record of his early political or military service, which might suggest a lack of significant achievement. The fact that he was later entrusted with such an important military responsibility is somewhat surprising given his subsequent performance. It's possible his appointment was due to familial connections or perhaps a perceived need for someone willing to undertake a challenging and potentially dangerous task, aka a fall guy.
Yep. Needing someone just to, hey, I need a warm body.
It's like we know he's going to mess up. This guy's a joke. We need a guy who we know will fuck it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
As the son of a Roman senator, even one whose reputation later suffered, Antony would have received an education typical for boys of his social standing. This education likely began within the household under the guidance of slaves or freedmen who served as tutors. He would have learned basic literacy in Latin, perhaps through reading inscriptions, simple texts, and learning the alphabet. He would have also been instructed in basic arithmetic and Roman customs, traditions, and history, particularly stories of Roman heroes and the legendary founding of the city. Moral instruction, emphasizing Roman virtues like pietas, duty, gravitas, seriousness, and virtus.
Manliness.
Virtus, manliness. The fucking.
Isn't that weird? Like I might be wrong, not a Latin scholar, but virtus sounds a lot like virtue.
It does. No, that's it hasn't been missed by you. That's on purpose.
It feels sus, sis.
It is sus. I mean, think about what they thought of the fairer sex, where they literally thought women were the devil. Yeah, and they thought that being a man was a virtue. So
we are men,
but it's
manly
also
men.
vigor, manliness. But this would have been a huge part of his early upbringing. Around the age of 7, Antony would likely have attended a ludus literarius, a primary school run by a literator. Here, his education would have become more structured. He would have continued to develop his reading and writing skills, focusing on classical Latin literature, possibly including the works of poets like Livius Andronicus and Aeneas.
Ooh, an Andronicus, huh? Adr-
Andronicus.
Ooh, I like to
Ooh.
think he's like, I don't know, just this like queer icon. Like he's probably not, but like
Possibly where we get the word androgyny, but probably not.
probably not. But I'm going to pretend he was, being taught by Livius Androgynous, and Androgynous was like there with his sexy boots. It's like,
Oh
hey,
no, this is
I
where the
heard a little
sexiness
rumor,
comes into place.
and I heard a little rumor that you be the descendant of Venus, honey.
Oh no, now he's being taught by a drag queen.
He's not a drag queen. He doesn't need to be a drag queen. He just got that voice.
No, because now
Like, what's
that's
that
all I can
one?
see. That is the only picture I have in my head now. Now he's being taught in school how to read and do the classical Latin literature by a drag queen with the sexy
But who's
boots.
that one? Who's that one? Oh my god, it's on the tip of my tongue. Who's that one guy? Oh, he's in Pose and a bunch of other stuff. He always he's like masculine, like presenting, but then he wears like dresses with suits and stuff like that. He's like real big right now, and I'm
Oh goodness.
betraying my fellow. I'm gonna find him. Billy Porter. Billy Porter. He's giving me Billy Porter, androgynous.
Got you. Yes, absolutely.
So he's being taught by Billy Porter.
Absolutely. In our head canon.
No, it's just canon. It's just canon. Mark Antony, guys, put it in your paper. Taught by Billy Porter. How to read and write.
Oh my gosh. But during this education, grammar and basic rhetoric would have been introduced. Then, by the age of 12, Antony might have progressed into the tutelage of a grammaticus. This stage focused on a deeper study of Latin literature, including more complex poetic and prose works. He would have analyzed texts, learned literary style, and further developed his grammatical understanding. There might have also been an introduction to Greek language and literature, as Greek culture held significant prestige in Roman intellectual circles. Alongside intellectual pursuits, physical training was considered essential for Roman boys, particularly those from prominent families who might have been expected to serve in the military or public life. Antony would have engaged in activities like running, jumping, wrestling, and perhaps even learning to ride and handle weapons. These activities instilled discipline, physical prowess, and a sense of camaraderie.
And Billy Porter absolutely taught him all of those things. Running,
1,000%. 1,000%.
maybe not the, maybe wrestling, but definitely learning how to ride and handle weapons. He learned that from some sort of queer icon. Not saying Billy Porter.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
But given his grandfather's renowned eloquence, there might have been an early emphasis on rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking. Even if not formally trained by a dedicated rhetor at his young age, he would have been exposed to the importance of effective communication in Roman public life. This early exposure could have contributed to his later reputation as a powerful orator.
Historical accounts, though often colored by political bias, paint a picture of Antony's developing personality during his early years. As we mentioned earlier, sources like Cicero, who, let's be clear, is very biased, again, just putting it out there, suggested that Antony's teenage years, particularly after his father's death, spoiler alert, his daddy did, were marked by a lack of discipline and a fondness for pleasure.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. He is portrayed as someone who enjoyed the company of his peers, engaged in drinking, gambling, and romantic entanglements. And I'm thinking like a 13-year-old just getting wasted. Like,
Oh
red
no.
drunk. Like, well, that's what's happening. He's only a teenager. Like, oh no. But it's a different time. It's a different time. That's why he became the new Dionysus.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this would lead to significant debt. This suggests a personality that was perhaps impulsive, pleasure-seeking, maybe, and less inclined towards the traditional Roman virtues of restraint and seriousness, at least during his youth, and I would dare say his life in general. But
yeah, I don't disagree.
At least based off what we know, and granted, is Cicero the best? No, but he's not the only account, right? I think if there's a point where if everyone's saying it, maybe it's true, But I'm not judging. Not judging. To be clear, Cicero had no reason to promote Antony, especially by the time he was writing this. However, the reason why will become clear as we go on with the story. It's not to say that none of this is true, but as we're familiar with today, people with political agendas like to spin facts to prove their perceived truths. So keep that in mind. Again, he could have been drinking and having a good time. Doesn't mean he's a douchebag, Maybe he is. Maybe we're just cherry picking the things we don't like and then not promoting the things that we do. You know what I'm saying? He could have been doing those things, but then we're not saying, yeah, he got drunk and, groped a lady. But then also earlier that day, he saw a kid trip and fall and help the kid up. But we're not going to mention that, both things can be true. I mean, he's not a hero, but he's human, That being said, despite the negative portrayals, Antony must have possessed a certain charisma and sociability that drew people to him. His ability to form strong bonds and loyalties later in life likely had roots in his early interactions. His penchant for socializing and enjoying company suggests an outgoing and perhaps even charming personality. There was also a strong emphasis on physical training in Roman education, and this likely resonated with Antony. He was later known for his physical strength, endurance, qualities that would have been evident even in his youth. His reported involvement in more boisterous activities suggests a high level of energy and physicality that contrasted a more studious disposition. To put it simply, he was a jock. He was a jock. And in a tale as old as time, nerds and jocks are natural-born enemies. This, in a nutshell, explains the animosity between Cicero and Antony later on. Cicero's not known for his physical machismo. He's known as being brainy and smart. And he hates these fucking jocks who get all the ladies. And meanwhile, he's got a divorce. God, can't you just keep in your pants? God.
I hate that because he just feels like he's got something to prove. And it's like, dude, just exist and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Anthony's just giving everyone noogies.
Or a whirly.
Hey, dude, take a whiff of this. Face and armpit. That's rank, right?
Oh my god.
But that's what Cicero wants you to believe.
That is what Cicero wants you to believe. That is not a lie. Oh my gosh. I feel like the more that we're talking about Cicero, the more that I'm just seeing him as this really, really bitchy person. He's got a burn book. He's writing about all this in his diary, and we're taking his diary as fact. What the fuck?
You're really not wrong. You're really, really not wrong. Not at all.
That's questionable.
And we've got whole towns and stuff named after this guy. He was the last defender of republicanism, as we will learn though, maybe not. Maybe he's part of the reason of its downfall. But he's going to portray himself as one of the last great bastions of republicanism and conservatism and blah, 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 blah.
Well, of course. These guys think their farts don't stink. Come on now.
Mm-hmm. He's giving Mitch McConnell energy.
Oh, no.
He's giving
the frogman?
A little bit. I mean, I don't think he's giving full MAGA. I don't think he's giving that.
Okay.
But it's one of those old guard Republicans who were well, they they allowed some of the more extremist people to push their own agendas, but they're like, well, we'll keep it under control, we'll rein it in, and then they're all surprised when, like, oh shit, we can't.
Shocked Pikachu
Like, they're going to take it to a whole. We were like, we just were just fantasizing about fascism. We didn't actually want to do it, you know, or at least if we were going to do it, we'd want it under our name. But yeah, no, you'll see. And to highlight that analogy, the jock one, further, even in his youthful escapades, there might have been glimpses of leadership qualities, leading a group of friends into revelries, and even if those activities were frowned upon by more conservative elements in the Roman society, suggests an ability to influence and command. However, the loss of his father at a young age and subsequent marriage of his mother to the controversial Lentinus Sora likely played a role in shaping his personality, aka, well, we'll get there, the lack of a strong paternal figure and the exposure to a more libertine lifestyle through his stepfather might have contributed to his early indulgences, aka daddy issues.
Lots of daddy issues.
Lots of daddy issues, as you'll see. He needs a daddy. He needs a daddy to be okay.
He does.
However, his mother's strong character and noble lineage would have also instilled a sense of his family's potential and the importance of social standing. Again, he's the descendant of heroes and the goddess of Venus. Kinky boots. Just like, yes. It's also important to remember that our understanding of Antony's early personality is largely based on anecdotes and the interpretations from later periods. It's not like he was like, dear diary, that's for nerds. And
nerds will color every interaction in the way that they want to, rather than fact.
Well, I think we all will. Even if he's later dictating and writing, he's going to portray himself a certain way, right? Like, oh yeah, we were just great kids and we had this fun little gang where we'd all hang out and, like, you know, we get up to some trouble, but it was good fun, you know. But you know, we were living our best lives, and you know, just we were rippling, and like, you know, like, we're not going to mention the time he was like crying because this girl dumped him, you know, or that time someone made fun of his lack of pubic hair. I don't know. We've grown.
Oh, where did that come from? Wow.
I don't know. Or maybe too much of it. I don't know. That's why he started waxing. And then he went through that whole waxing phase. And then he got a rash. And everyone saw his funny rash. No one's going to bring that up. You know, so like, no matter who's painting the story, right? There's going to be bias.
I mean, there's always going to be bias. Let's be real. Wow.
Or how his penis was just too big, because that was the thing they worried about, you know, in Greece anyway.
I never understood that.
You're just big. Well, so here's the scoop on that. It represents like the idea that you can't control yourself, I guess. So that means barbarism. So it's like you are a slave to your needs, and the fact that your dick is just so big you can't even hide it, you know, like, put it away, no one wants to see that. Does that sound a little familiar? It's funny because we have also kind of a weird thing with that, but like it's like we want it to be out of the way in public, but at the same time, like, when we take off our pants, it just magically goes whoa, boom, and it's humongous. I don't know, you can't have it both ways, at least the Greeks and Romans.
It sounds like people that had small penises were just like, I'm going to make you feel bad for being blessed.
Yeah. Or, you know, I mean, and like the thing is, yeah, that's why, if you ever wondered why they're all small in statues, because that's why. And if you're wondering why they're outrageously big in others, a lot of the times they're quote unquote rustic gods, or like, for example, like Dionysus or Priapus or all that. They're like, oh, well, that was from like Thrace. Those were one of those barbarian gods we took in because they were fun. And it's like, actually, there's a much deeper history, and it goes way back in your own country. and you're embarrassed about it, I guess. It
Oh
doesn't
my
line up with your
goodness.
current, tell me when this sounds familiar. It doesn't line up with your current wants and desires, right? It's almost like you
Mm-hmm.
quote an old book or something like that, but you
Yeah.
cherry pick the parts you like. Yeah. Anyway, it's all so yeah. With that being said, the reoccurring themes of a lack of early discipline coupled with a natural charisma and physical vitality provide a glimpse into the complex individual who would later rise to such prominence in Roman history. His early education provided the foundation of Roman knowledge and skills, while his formative experiences and inherent personality traits would shape his actions and decisions in the dramatic years to come.
In 74 BCE, a moment that should have cemented the family's standing, Antony's father was entrusted with an extraordinary command, a critical mission to quell the burgeoning piracy that plagued the Mediterranean. This was no minor undertaking. It involved substantial financial resources and a significant deployment of Roman naval forces, a clear indication of the Senate's confidence, however misplaced it would prove to be. Creticus was granted imperium and a substantial fleet to combat the growing threat that was disrupting Roman trade and security. This was a significant opportunity for him to gain glory and restore the family's standing. However, Creticus managed to bungle it up. His campaign in the Mediterranean proved to be a disastrous failure. According to various accounts, Creticus, on brand, mismanaged his fleet and resources. He engaged in conflicts that he was ill prepared for and suffered significant losses.
Tell
The
me to
pirate.
stop when this sounds familiar. Just saying.
Yes, very much so.
We put someone in charge of, he has had no real experience in, but we're going to put him in charge of it, and then we're going to be super shocked when it doesn't work out.
Shocked Pikachu face. The pirates, far from being subdued, reportedly inflicted humiliating defeats upon his forces. One particularly damaging episode is said to have occurred off the coast of Crete. As a result of his incompetence and especially his poor performance within the vicinity of Crete, his contemporaries sarcastically bestowed upon him the nickname Creticus, meaning the Cretan. This was a way to ridicule his lack of success and to forever associate him with the most embarrassing military failure. It implied that instead of conquering, he was somehow conquered by or made a fool of himself in Crete. This goes back to the Greco-Roman idea of sexuality, where there was a dominant submissive role. Nothing was more shameful to a Roman's masculinity than the idea of having been dominated.
Dominated.
Yep.
Always a top, never a bottom.
Some sources suggest he even resorted to extortion and plundering of allied territories to fund his failing campaign, further damaging his reputation. So he turned around, he's like, all right, I'm gonna be a pirate to try and get rid of the pirates now. Like, the fuck, dude? Moron. His inability to effectively address the pirate threat not only undermined Roman authority, but also likely caused significant financial losses for Roman merchants and the state. This failure would have been a major embarrassment for Rome and for Creticus himself. He ultimately died in Crete in 71 BCE when young Antony was 11 years old, without achieving any notable success against the pirates. His death likely occurred amidst the ongoing humiliation of his failed command. This untimely demise left his wife Julia to raise their 3 young sons in the shadow of his incompetence and tarnished reputation. The impact of his father's failures and the early death on young Mark Antony must have been significant. Growing up with a father who was increasingly seen as a failure and then losing him at such a young age would have contributed to feelings of instability or a desire to prove himself and perhaps even avenge his father's damaged honor. I wouldn't say that. As somebody with trauma related to the daddy issues, no, it's more of I will restore family honor rather than that one. I will be so great that he will be in my shadow. He will be the skeleton in
Yeah.
the closet, and I will be so great that nobody will ever look at that again.
At the
Um,
same time, though, this is a different era, right? And like this idea that it's Rome, and this is where like there we have to back ourselves away from our modern
well,
like feelings
yes.
because we are a different culture, and like there's like whole domestic gods, right? And like
Yeah.
ancestral worship. So if someone's besmirching your father, they're also besmirching your ancestral gods. And
Yeah.
like, right? So like there is like if even if you don't like your father, right? You have to restore his honor, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise you have none. It's something that we won't necessarily be able to relate to, but it is something that could potentially be there. But I would say, if nothing else, proving himself absolutely. It
Mhm.
from just a more raw human experience when your dad fucks up this bad, right?
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Well, of course.
And
And you have to
the
prove
only
that the apple fell so far from the tree that you were able
right,
to grow an
or you have
orchard
to prove
yourself.
that the tree wasn't faulty. Because the other
Yes.
thing, because that can haunt you. It's like you here we're under this impression of right, your father, your parents can kind of do whatever they want. And like we have a lot more leeway, right, to go
Mhm.
beyond what our parents were,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it's even celebrated. However, that was not the case back then, right? So in a
Mhm.
way, you almost have to drag the tree towards you to be like, see, he wasn't that bad. This is all slander and lies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, or because otherwise, people question you. It's like, yeah, you conquered half the known world, but your dad was an idiot. Should we really let you be in charge? Which is weird, but that's kind of how they did shit. So even
I
yeah,
wonder, just like, again, another side note, is that one of the reasons why they baptized babies whenever Christianity and Catholicism kind of became a thing? Because then it did cleanse you from your father's sins. And
huh,
so it
I don't know. That's a good.
unlinked it. I'm just a wondering, just a
I don't know.
thought.
That's a good thought. I mean, I'm not sure. That's I mean, I could see it. I could see it. I just don't. I mean, I would have to look up that paper, or talk to a theologian, which sounds horrible. But yeah, I mean, I can see the through line there. I suppose, yeah. Um, if it kind of makes sense because up until that point, right,
Mhm.
you have this idea that you do carry the sins of your forefathers,
Yeah.
and you have to make up for their lack of honor. And sometimes that doesn't stop with you. Sometimes it takes a couple generations, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and that again, honestly, it's even then it's a more modern concept that like your dad could have been, like the guy who went for milk and never came back, but that you could be like president of the United States,
Yeah.
you know? Like just because he's an idiot doesn't mean you have to, you know.
It's
And
less
this is
your
not
destiny is tied directly to his action. It's more like you are
right.
able to make your own. Whereas this one is
Like
directly tied, like there is no way to untie it.
right. It's like social mobility is really hard too. So there's that
Mhm.
part too. It's like so let's be nice, right? Let's say that your dad was just a sweet, humble peasant farmer, right?
Mhm.
You're not probably going to be anything more than a peasant farmer yourself for those same reasons. Because even if
Yep.
you're smart and brilliant and super hot, your dad wasn't. Which is weird, right? To
That's
us today,
very
because
weird.
your dad
Very
could
strange.
absolutely be a farmer and you could be a superhero, aka Clark Kent, and Superman. Like, no, like, but that's our culture. It's like you can rise above whatever your background is. And
Yes.
which is so problematic because that's not always true. That's also dismissing life a little bit. And like
Very much so.
right. And like have what kind of head start you have compared to other people and privilege.
Mhm.
But so we've gone the complete opposite direction with some of that. And then it's like, oh, you didn't pick yourself up by the straps. There's been plenty of people who have. You just must be lazy, man. And
No,
that's not
and
appropriate either.
the funny part is you bring up the bootstraps. Bootstraps was meant to be like you can't pick yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not possible. and the phrase has just been turned into something it never was, which is so
Mhm.
fucking stupid. But I think we have gone on enough of a tangent. Let's
Yes.
circle
Yes.
back. Circle back. So, his father's damaged honor might have fostered a certain resentment towards the established Roman political order that had entrusted his father with such a crucial task, only to witness his downfall. While Marcus Antonius Orator provided a powerful legacy of eloquence and civic duty, Marcus Antonius Creticus seems to have offered a contrasting example, a cautionary tale of ambition exceeding ability and the consequences of failure in the high stakes world of Roman politics. His life, though ultimately unsuccessful, provides a crucial backdrop for understanding the early environment that shaped the future triumvir. Young Antony would have had to navigate the complexities of his family's mixed legacy, perhaps striving to emulate his grandfather's strengths while learning from his father's shortcomings.
Mhm. The historical accounts suggest that Marcus Antonius Creticus, which I'm so sorry we've been calling him Crete's Bottom the entire time. I forgot that that's what that meant, but Crete's Bottom did not long survive this crushing defeat. The death of Marcus Antonius Creticus in 71 BCE, while perhaps not as dramatically recounted as the demise of some other Roman figures in the era, has significant impact, of course, on young Mark Antony and his family. Piecing the details from fragmented historical records allows to understand the circumstances and immediate aftermath of this event. As we've discussed, Creticus was given a substantial military command in 74 BCE to tackle the pervasive problem of piracy in the Mediterranean. This was a high stakes mission, offering the potential for significant glory and a chance to restore the family's honor. However, things, of course, had gone terribly wrong. So, instead of decisively engaging the pirates' fleets, Creticus' campaign was marked by those series of blunders and defeats. The continuous news of his failures would have undoubtedly cast a dark shadow over Antonius' household in Rome. The initial hopes for a glorious victory would have gradually eroded and been replaced by anxiety, and perhaps the shame of Creticus' incompetence became apparent. The family's finances might also, probably, have been strained by the cost of the failed expedition. This being a time where a lot of the times the people running the campaign were the ones bankrolling it too.
Mm-hmm.
The exact circumstances surrounding Creticus' death in 71 BC are murky in the surviving sources. However, the context suggests a few possibilities. The first, that after a couple years of campaigning and suffering defeats, Creticus might have succumbed to illness or wounds sustained during his ill-fated engagements. The harsh conditions of military campaigns in antiquity often led to disease and injury, such as dysentery, which is just a horrible diarrhea death.
Probably
Maybe he got
tetanus.
got tetanus, which he steps on a dirty nail and then that's it. That's
Mm.
unfortunate. You and insert any infection that you get from getting a cut. You get a paper cut, you die.
Staph. He died from
Mm,
a paper cut.
right. The dysentery is real big.
Oh, that's
Um,
huge. Dirty water,
yeah,
man. Dirty water.
dirty water. Another theory is that the immense pressure of his failure and public ridicule he faced might have taken his toll on health and spirit, potentially contributing to his demise. The shame of such a significant military failure in Roman society could be devastating. AKA, they try to make it sound like maybe he just wasted away. But it could be suicide.
Ah.
Which, granted, suicide was not considered shameful, though, so I have my doubts on that one. Because, if anything, that's weirdly enough in Rome almost a way to redeem honor, question mark. You see it a lot, where, like, if, like, a Roman is about to face defeat, they kill themselves, and that's considered an honorable way out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same connotation today. So I feel like if he had done that, they would have just said that. But the last one is perhaps the most simple. It's possible that he just died while still engaged with some form of conflict or attempting to salvage his disastrous campaign in the Mediterranean. That is what he was sent there to do. So could have gotten stabbed.
Stabby stab.
That's it. He did. Regardless of the precise cause, his death in Crete in 71 BCE marked a significant turning point for his young sons, particularly the 12-year-old Mark Antony. The loss of their father would have been a deeply personal blow, compounded by the public disgrace that would accompany it.
The immediate aftermath of Creticus's death would have involved the somber rituals of a Roman burial and mourning. Julia, his widow, would have been left to care for their 3 young sons. The family's financial situations might have been precarious depending on the debt incurred by Creticus or the losses suffered during his command. Moreover, the legacy of his failure would have hung over his sons like a battle axe. Mark Antony, in particular, would have grown up knowing
the sword
that
his is hanging over my head.
We're not yet there, Kinky Boots. Come on now.
So Mark Antony is Rocky. Got it.
Absolutely. But Mark Antony in particular would have grown up knowing that his father was remembered for incompetence and defeat. This might have fueled a desire within him to prove his own worth and perhaps to even redeem the family name through his own achievements, though his early years seemed to take a different path. The death of Creticus left a void in the lives of his sons and likely contributed to the instability of their early years. It thrust their mother Julia into the challenging position of a widow, responsible for their upbringing, ultimately leading to her subsequent marriage to Lentulus Sura. While the details of his death are somewhat obscure, its impact on the trajectory of Mark Antony's life and the family's standing in Roman society was undoubtedly profound.
For the young Marcus Antonius, witnessing the sequence of events, his father's grand commission, the subsequent devastation of the news of defeat, and then his untimely death must have been a deeply impactful experience. At an age when young Roman nobles were beginning to form their understanding of leadership, power, and the consequences of failure, Antony was confronted with a stark and personal example. He would have witnessed firsthand the fragility of even significant authority and the swift and brutal consequences of military incompetence. The ignominy associated with his father's end could have instilled in him a powerful aversion to failure and a heightened awareness of the importance of military success in Roman society. Furthermore, the loss of his father at a relatively young age would have undoubtedly created a void in his life, potentially contributing to the instability Plutarch describes in his upbringing. The lack of consistent paternal guidance during a crucial development period could have influenced his later choices and contributed to the reported drift towards less conventional pursuits. The responsibility for the family standing and potential recovery may have also fallen, at least in part, on the shoulders of young Antony, even before he reached adulthood, because he's the man of the house now. Come on, grow up. You're 12 years old. Get a fucking job.
Damn.
You're not 11 anymore.
And it's literally, though, seriously,
Go
that's
work. Mm-hmm.
Ouch.
Like, come on. What did we lower the age to get a job for, if not for you to go work in the mines? I mean, as a senator, I don't know.
The children long for the mines.
Come on. Could you imagine, though, like, you're 12 years old, like, our 12, right? And, like, your dad died, so now it's your job to pay the fucking bills and, like, make sure the debt's taken care of. Like, you got a debt collector, like, hey, your dad just died. Where's our money? Wait, what? Like, I was watching, like, anime.
I was
like,
watching cartoons. Like, what are you talking about?
right.
Money? I don't
I'm
have
playing
money.
Pokemon. Like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
In essence, the death of Marcus Antonius Criticus was not an isolated event. It was a public spectacle of Roman vulnerability, a personal tragedy for the Antonian family, and a formative experience for the young Marcus Antonius himself. It likely instilled in him a profound understanding of the high stakes of Roman ambition, the unforgiving nature of military failure, and the enduring importance of honor and success in the public eye. The shadow of his father's defeat and death would have lingered, perhaps serving both as a cautionary tale and a potential impetus for his own later pursuit of military glory and political dominance. Dominance.
The untimely demise of Marcus Antonius Criticus cast a long shadow over the Antonius household, a chill that lingered even after the solemn rituals of Roman burial had been completed. For young Marcus, barely a man in his 12th year, the loss was a visceral ache. I would not call that a man by any standard, but
a man. He's not. He's like that. Like, look,
what are
mom,
you,
I grew
12?
up. Right. He's like, look, guys, I just grew my first pube. And they're like, ew, shave it all off. We don't like pubes. This is wrong. Look at our statues. They don't got pubes.
Yuck. But this visceral ache was compounded by the whispers of his father's failures, a bitter inheritance for a boy on the cusp of manhood. Yet, life in the bustling heart of the Republic rarely allowed for prolonged mourning. Practicalities demanded attention, and for Julia, the widowed matrona of a respectable, if recently tarnished, lineage, the paramount concern was the security and future of her 3 sons.
So, if you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. It goes a long way for us to appease the algorithm gods and gets us suggested to others just like you. The more we can connect to our fellow history nerds, the more we can build up a community and keep the show going.
Also, we have a Patreon where you can hang out with us and get exclusive content, like videos where we might try to make some ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of the podcast, and just generally being batshit and dumpster fires. All for the price of a latte per month. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time to create the show, so anything that you could provide would be a huge help. We can't wait to see you again next week.
And as always, thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.